To get started with creating basic lighting setup, press Shift-A and go to Create Lights. Select the point light. Transform to a light source. I think I will have this be a daytime scene, so I imagine a gentle blue tint light to be coming through this window. This will also highlight the archway and fruit and recipe book on the counter. Adjust the brightness of the light in the menu on the right. It is located by clicking on the light bulb icon. Rename the light in the list or by pressing F2. The power is the intensity and the radius is the spread reach of the light. The larger the radius, the more diluted the light will be in Blender. Press F2 to rename the light. Now I am going to duplicate this light. Shift-D. Changing the light color to be deep orange for the fire. Increase the radius and bump up the power by a lot more. Enough to burn down a village. In the render settings, turn on cycles and also select GPU, as it is why you bought a fancy computer. I turned down the sampling to 16 so the preview window and renders will be quick. I also turned off denoise as that isn't important at this stage. If you are using this for detailed texture work to preview, then turn that back on. For a final render, always have it turned on. I was just showing how locking camera works in Blender. It is done through the view window. Hotkey 0 on the numpad to go to camera viewport. Ctrl-B to custom adjust the viewport size. Just ignite already little fire. OK, duplicate that light, rename it to fill light and change the color and settings to be more subtle, as this is to fill in the shadows and create the false bounce light that would happen in reality. Duplicate the light, Shift-D. This light will be for the candles. F2 to rename. Change the settings to suit the light source. For a speed draft preview, I just put at 25% for the render. I am adding some extra geometry for the normal map bake. Since this is simple cartoony theme and the texture maps are rather small, I am not going to over-worry about how detailed or correct these normal maps are. I want the normal maps to help with the spec and roughness maps. I am also cleaning up the geometry as I go along. For more complex multi-resolution assets that require detailed sculpting, I would save off each asset in its own file, as that can crash the scene having so many assets with multi-resolutions on it. For a more thorough details of how to sculpt and bake out maps, look at my Pharaohhound Dog series. Link will be in descriptions. This is a light render with most of the assets, with a small basic normal maps. I have to redo the oven mitt because the mesh corrupted. The only major things I will be sculpting will be the corn and oven mitt. I will be detailing in the color textures as well as creating the spec and roughness and maybe bump maps later on. Just sculpting this corn. This is really fun and cathartic. I have multi-resolution most of the assets and created a normal map and used that to help with creating the textures in Photoshop. I have skipped all that, and the basic node work was able to skip over creating spec and bump maps. Blender can be so forgiving. I just reused the color texture maps and connected it to be the spec or bump as well. What a time saver. Jumping ahead, here is my finished texture work in Eevee render view so you get a clear idea of what it looks like without the final lighting. Here is the grande tour of the mini house up close. I am going to pick a snow background and change the exposure of lighting with the nodes to be more like late afternoon. Trying to rotate the HDRI to get a background that I like. I also tweaked the texture of the treehouse. The foreground sliced exposed wood is too distracting. Yippee! Here is the finalized look. All I need is to finish slapping a texture on the window frame and then this natchescape will be completed. Check out my blogspot to see the large render still image. See you next time, ciao amigos.